Sex and national security. Okay. Before I get into this class, I want to talk a little bit about something that was discussed earlier, and this is some words of Alexander Solzhenitsyn back in the 1970s, where he said, "Live not by lies." Now, this was his advice for how to deal with living in the Soviet Union, where all freedom was gone, and so forth. But he said the entire totalitarian state is built on lies. Everybody knows that they're lying. The state knows that they're lying, the people know that they're lying, and everybody's going along with the lying. And as long as everybody is going along with the lie, the state lives. The totalitarian state lives. Your vaccine. You're choosing to not live by the lie, and it terrifies the totalitarian state. We have to resolve. When we see lies in society now, we have to do it with wisdom and so forth. But you basically say the state may be lying, but it is not going to, that lie is not going to live through me. And it can cost you. But the thing is like when some people choose not to live by lies, it encourages others, and they stop living by it. And it just goes. It grows from there. This is a moment. And like I said, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he lived through it. He lived this. And he says that a single person who chooses not to live by a lie can bring down a country. So that's my word on that. All right, sex and national security. My teaser. But as for you, you are to keep my statutes and my judgment and shall not do any of these abominations, so that the land will not spew you out should you defile it, as it spewed out the nation which has been before you. This is the word that the Lord was giving to the children of Israel before they entered to the land of Canaan. If you remember, they entered in, and they basically had the commandment and the right to go in and make war against the citizens of Canaan. And in part, it was because of this. The land of Canaan had moved to a particular place in their soul where their eradication was a kindness. Okay? I want you to understand that. God's wrath always has a face of mercy. And you need to understand that too. God's wrath always has a face of mercy. One of my proof texts for that, if you remember the book of Revelation, there's a bunch of people crying for the rocks to fall down on them to save them from the wrath of the Lamb. The Lamb. Have you ever seen a lamb? They're in petting zoos, right? But the Lamb is what? The symbol of God's grace and mercy and redemption. And it is the wrath of the Lamb that's coming. And basically, when the wrath of God comes, anybody that sees the face of the Lamb can reach out and receive his mercy. I'm not even on my lesson yet. I'm on all kinds of other things. Sorry. God's wrath always has the face of mercy. All right. I first taught this lesson in 1986. It was a lot safer back then. The topic of this, you could say things like this, and people would say, well, that's as a matter of fact, a lot of people would say, boy, that's true. I expect pushback from this. It's not a safe time to have a message like this. But as I began, live not by lies. Congress, in 1986, Congress had just passed the first amnesty law for illegal immigrations, all the way back in 1986. It was just beginning to be perceived as a problem. And the gay rights were beginning to make a lot of noise about, being accepted in society and so forth. Based on the text I'm going to tonight, I made some predictions back then. I said, here's what the Bible predicts. And all is proceeding as predicted. So I want you to consider a couple things. And this will become probably a little bit more clear as I go on. But estimates that last month there was some 400,000 illegal immigrants that were going to be faced by Border Patrol. There are reports that the Afghan nationals that we brought all over from Afghanistan, unvetted and things like that, just began walking off the places where they were being held. This statistic is interesting. In 2020, last year, 20 states had more deaths than births for the first time in U.S. history. And you need to ponder how extraordinary it is for any country, nation, community, and so forth to have more people die than born. That yields to what is what's called a demographic winter. The year 2030 is projected to be a demographic turning point for the United States. Beginning that year, all baby boomers, I'm one of those, all baby boomers will be older than 65, and within the decade, older adults 65 years and older are projected to outnumber children under 18 years. Okay? Now, the question is why is this? Okay? Let me go a little bit more. This is a little bit hard to see, but basically the blue graph bars are what you call natural increase. If you take the number of people who are born and subtract the number of people who die, this is the increase, the relative increase, the percentage increase of our population. The light purple is net international immigration. So beginning in 2017, you can see that the natural increase was at a rate of 1.4. Immigration was 1.0. By 2060, the natural increase is down to 0.5. And the international immigration is at 1.1. And this is before Biden opened up our borders. Okay, now let's do some math here. If immigration is far exceeding natural births, we are talking about a displacement. So the thing is, it comes down to this. Our young people increasingly are not having children. Immigration rates are projected to be stable, but that was before Joe Biden opened the borders. And I heard one person exclaim a little while ago, pets are the new children. Plants are the new pets. Okay, so rather than have a child, you get a dog. If you're smart, you get a cat. But anyway, pets are the new children and plants are the new pets. But there's a shift going on here. And this shift goes back for almost 60 years. So immigration is increasing, native growth is decreasing, and the future belongs to immigration. I want to make another point. The political divide is sexually based. Have you ever pondered this? Every time there is a new Supreme Court justice to be put, what is the left afraid of? Roe versus Wade, gay rights. Up until the Supreme Court suddenly made gay marriage legal, every time that topic was put to a vote, and we're talking about a place like California, Proposition 8, gay marriage lost by a landslide. So they bring these issues to a sympathetic court, and voila, it's the law of the land. But because it has bypassed the will of the people, suddenly, all this dynamic comes with, we have to have the right president, we have to have the right Congress, primarily because what we want is to get the right people on the Supreme Court. We are a sexualized nation. I mean, our division comes down to sex. And of course, as soon as we had a Supreme Court that was a little bit more balanced, they now want to increase the numbers in the Supreme Court. You get the picture, right? But what do they want to preserve? Gay rights and abortion. It's boring. Priorities. Again, it's hard to see this, but basically, the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan spent more time planning for Pride Month than it did for the withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is a poster from the Afghanistan in our embassy in Afghanistan that's saying, we're celebrating gay pride and on and on and on, but the focus is there rather than on a smart military strategy. So now I get to what I'm going to talk about. It was not always this way. What the Bible does have to say about sexuality, the defiled land, and our response. So, when I was a kid, we used to sing this to each other. John and Mary sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Mary pushing the baby carriage. Does anybody sing this anymore? I think this got lost. But look at the values of this little chime that we were all singing to each other way back when. Someone's shaking their head. He's old like I am. He remembers. Look at the value here. Marriage, children. A sense of permanency. And it was all wrapped up in a little childhood jingle that got lost. When I was 1957, when I was 7 years old, this was a popular song on the radio. It's by the Everly Brothers. And the words go like this: we've both been sound asleep. Wake up, little Susie, and weep. The movie's over, it's 4 o'clock, and we're in trouble deep. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. What are we going to tell your mama? What are we going to tell your pa? What are we going to tell our friends when they say, ooh la la? Because we fell asleep by mistake, and they're going to think we did the deed, and nobody does the deed, and we are in trouble with our friends, and we're in trouble with our parents, and nobody cares about this anymore. This was a popular song. These two things, to me, point out a fundamental shift in the psyche of this nation over the last 60 years or so. So, is a nation made strong? From strong individuals? Well, it can. From a strong government overseeing the needs of the people? Well, sort of. From strong extended family units. And for me, that third one is the most important. Because if you have a strong extended family unit where you have a mother and a father and their children, and then you've got the aunts and the uncles and their children, and you've got the grandparents, and you just got this spread of people, all related to each other, all knowing each other, and all there to be the first line of defense when trouble comes. That is the true, strong building block of a nation. If you have a strong extended family, then the need for a strong government overseeing the needs of people is lessened because it's handled at the family level. And quite frankly, the strong extended family is what is producing the strong individuals. But this nation has walked a path. And this is a little bit of abbreviated, but this is out of Leviticus 18. And when I said we have walked a path, we started at step 1 and we have been working our way through the list. And it starts with this: you shall not approach a woman during her menstrual impurity. You shall not have intercourse with your neighbor's wife. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Moloch. And by that, it means that you burned your children before this God. You shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female. You shall not lie with any animal. And all these, and you've got to look at this word, all of these have been declared by the Lord to be an abomination. So let's take a look at these. Do not approach a woman during her period. Face it, sexual intercourse was designed to conceive children and draw the husband and wife closer. That's its design. I mean, the thing is, it's like people find it incredibly easy to get pregnant, right? I mean, the woman is fertile for a good part of the month. And, you know, the bodies are designed to conceive and become pregnant. The primary purpose of marriage is to secure a good, stable, loving environment that raises godly children to serve the next generation. Again, the extended family. But in this commandment, I want sex. I don't care about my wife's dignity. Okay, I mean, this is the side of it. I don't care about I don't care what my wife thinks. I want it. I don't care that engaging with my wife during her period makes me ceremonially unclean, and I'm technically not able to go to the temple services. I don't care that it kind of messes with my ability to approach the presence of God. And quite frankly, I don't have to worry about conception. And with this, sex enters the realm of entertainment. It becomes an entity in and of itself. It is not associated with marriage and family and so forth. It becomes independent. And you have sex over here, and you have families over here, and yes, the family has sex. But sex is its own thing. And that's why this is the abomination. It sets the stage. It's the first step to everything else. And here I just want to talk about biblical family size goals. What does God say about how big our family should be? Well, God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that moves on the earth. The first commandment ever given to mankind was have babies. Have babies. This is what was on God's mind. There is the NIV translation of a passage in Micah says, has not the Lord made them one? In spirit and something else, they are his. And why one? Because he was seeking godly offspring. You know, so there's a purpose here. And then here, Psalm 127, behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies at the gate. And someone said, well, how many children do you think I have? And someone says, well, how many arrows do you want to have? Right? Sarai and Elizabeth and others bore the stigma of being barren and rejoiced to have children even in their old age. And here's Elizabeth. I mean, she may have been 55, 60 or so forth, and she has John in her arms, and she is just beaming. Let me just say, there's an adder to be fostered. Children are good and greatly to be wanted and desired. And see, this is what that very first thing, that very first abomination begins to interfere with. Children begin to not be greatly desired and wanted because you want the sex, you don't want the kids. Now, there are reasons to limit family size. I mean, the problem that I have communicating this side of things is that there is a religious spirit that would like to take this and tell you not to do birth control. To have 20 kids, if 20 kids is what you had before your body finally gave out. Right? Okay. This is not religion here. This is a perspective. What is your attitude towards children and having children? And understand that there are good, legitimate reasons for limiting family size. It's just that the sole sake of having sex without the burden of kids is not one of them. Okay, that's the point here. All right. Now we get into things that are maybe a little bit more obvious to us, but do not have sex with someone other than your wife. All right. There is, I believe, if two people can keep themselves to their wedding night, that the first sexual experience is so profound that there's some imprinting that goes on. There's the one flesh thing that Paul talks about and the Lord talks about that happens that in a sense might help solidify the marriage. All such unions have a mystical spiritual reality. In 1 Corinthians, Paul says, don't you know that when you join yourself with a prostitute that you are one flesh with her? And he goes ahead and quotes Genesis, where a man will leave his father and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And Paul says, you join yourself with a prostitute, you're one flesh with her. There's things, there's spiritual things that are going on in the sexual relationship that fornication and adultery just mess with. Adultery, when discovered, often ends the marriage, and the split homes damage the children. I mean, a marriage can survive adultery, but it takes a lot of forgiveness, it takes a lot of understanding, and it takes commitment. But the thing is like, if you look at this, every one of these abominations, as the Lord calls them, strikes at the heart of a strong, extended family on which a good and stable society is built. Widespread divorce, to find happiness in someone else that's related. And I could say this, after the U.S. threw out conception laws and promoted no-fault divorce, the family started to decline. It's hard to imagine that once upon a time, many of our states had laws against contraception. Okay? But it was, a different mindset back then. Because the idea was people should get married and have children and have a family. Okay, here's the thing. You're messing around before you're married. You're messing around with someone else's wife or someone else's husband, and you get pregnant. Right? I mean, look at this. I'm pregnant. The words, I'm pregnant. I mean, there's two responses here. Thank you, God. We're going to have a baby. Oh, no. What are we going to do? You see the last one? I mean, this is the subject of movies. It's actually the subject of fear and so forth. Oh, no, what are we going to do? All we wanted was a good time, and this happened. We got a problem to solve. Well, before there were, let's quote, safe abortion, ancient societies would take their children and they would expose them. Basically, they open up the door, they take the child to the alley, they open up the trash can, throw the baby in, close it up. Or the sacrifice to Moloch, where you would take your children and take them to a god and burn it. This is the Old Testament equivalent of abortion. And it's because when all you want from sex is to have a good time, babies get in the way, and the babies that are getting in the way have to be destroyed. And we have destroyed some 60 million of them in this country. Okay. I mean, there's no such thing as no harm, between consenting adults. There's always the possibility of harm. the thing is the taking of these lives hardens and defiles the heart. I mean, and to me, I wonder most about the doctors here, especially on partial birth abortion. If you ever look at what takes place in partial birth abortion, I mean, the doctor has most of a viable infant outside the womb, but not always, because if it came out, it would have legal rights. And it's got to go in and then kill it. I mean, how do you do that? How do you take something that is a newborn and kill it? I mean, this is beginning to defile the heart, and you cannot defile the heart without beginning to defile the people. And from a biblical perspective, the blood is crying out from the ground. It's crying out for justice. Homosexual activity. When the nation elevates sex for entertainment and ceases to fortify the family goals of sex, really, you got to ask the question, what limits actually can you hold? I mean, why can you deny this good time to this group over here because of they happen to be the same sex? You've already elevated sex to entertainment. It's the primary goal. It's the primary value. And therefore, it is inevitable that homosexual activity would have acceptance and normalization. It is inevitable. You cannot stop it. Gay marriage is a shift from marriage as the institution best suited for raising children to an institution that is the legal status for having sex. And marriage marriage as a concept begins to fall apart. The family as a concept begins to fall apart. And then I don't have much to say here, but the same thing goes. When you elevate sex to entertainment, you cannot put a limit on bestiality. It may sound yucky and horrible and things like that, but keep your ear open. I mean, I'm hearing jokes about this and all manner of things to an increasing nature. It's coming. And we are on the road to acceptance and normalization. So, here's the national security thing. After the Lord declares these to be abomination, he tells this to the children of Israel. He says, do not defile yourselves by any of these things, for by all these the nations which I am casting out before you have become defiled. They have become defiled, and you have permission to go in and drive them out because they've defiled themselves and they've defiled the land. But the land has become defiled, therefore I have brought its punishment upon it, so the land has spewed out its inhabitants. But as for you, you are to keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not do any of these abominations, neither the native nor the alien who sojourns among you. For the men of the land who have been before you have done all these abominations, and the land became defiled. But you are not to do them, so that the land will not spew you out, should you defile it as it spewed out the nation which has been before you. This is where we are. We have defiled this land. And if you want to know the real reason why our border is open, it's this. It is the other nations, the other people have been given permission to come in and, take up and in a sense displace us. This is from the Lord. We've asked for it, so to speak. And to put this in perspective, what has 60 years of the sexual revolution brought us? Well, let's look at this. There is a sobering theme repeated over and over in the biographies of school shooters. The fatherlessness of a broken or never formed family. Among the 25 most cited school shooters since Columbine, 75% were reared in broken homes. Psychologist Dr. Peter Langman A preeminent expert on school shooters found that the most came from incredibly broken homes of not just divorce and separation, but also infidelity, substance abuse, criminal behavior, domestic violence, and child abuse. To understand the brokenness of our children, Americans must first take a deeper look at the brokenness of our families. And even though you can find research and statistics that will tell you over and over again that by far the most stable children are going to come out of a family with a biological dad and a biological mom that are in love with each other, raising their kids, the gay community and so forth will not accept that, because to accept that is to reduce their status. And therefore, this will never come to the forefront as something that actually needs to be considered. Again, while statistics are incredibly sad, they should not be surprising. The nuclear family is society's most fundamental unit of structure. There are countless studies that prove growing up in a two-parent household is incredibly indicative of future lifetime success. There is perhaps no better blessing one can be granted than that of having the fortune of being born into an intact family with a mother and a father. The rise of extramarital births in conjunction with supremely high divorce rates have left many children growing up in households without fathers. This affects both boys and girls, but results in particularly dangerous consequences among boys. Gun violence and violence at large are explained by many variables. Gun reform and access to counseling are certainly solutions to some of the potential causes of violent crisis in America. However, I also believe encouraging the reunification of the American family is absolutely vital in confronting the problem. But it's not going to happen. So where it's going. Lot, before Sodom was destroyed, it says that God rescued Lot, a righteous man in anguish over the debauched lifestyle of lawless men. For while he lived among them day after day, that righteous man was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. Sodom was not a fun place to live in. It was violent. It was nasty. And I think Lot, is not so much there in condemning it all as grieving over the pain that he is seeing in that city. But the Lord, this is Genesis 6 before the flood, but the Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind had become great on the earth. Every inclination of the thoughts of their minds was only evil all the time. You got to love that phrase. Every evil all the time, only evil all the time. And that's where all this heads. So basically, what can we expect? Well, immigration will continue to displace the inhabitants of this nation, and our weakening military opens us up to an outside attack, and it will happen. Now, barring a revival, okay? But the thing is I'm of the opinion that we, the church, it's time for us to leave Babylon. And it's time for us to be the place that people come to. Okay? We can be the sanctuary. We can be the sanctuary that those who are broken by the aberrant sexuality that's out there can say, I see hope in those people. I see joy in those people. What do they have? Let me go find out. And then they find something that is satisfying, which is Christians in families. Now, I have one last slide. Again, what I'm calling for is actually big. I mean, it's only 6 bullet points. But the thing is that these 6 bullet points, I mean, I've walked my own path through these. And it's years. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give the first bullet point before I go to the slide. Back in the 1970s, Stephanie and I had 2 kids. We had Aaron, we had Jonathan. Jonathan was about that big. Aaron was about that big. And we had friends with a family that had 5 children. And the youngest of those 5 was about to go to first grade. And Stephanie went up to Susie and says, I bet you're glad, for that extra freedom you're going to have. And Susie Bradrick said, no, we like having our children around. Stephanie came back and she related that to me, and we looked at each other and we said, we have a problem. We don't like our kids that way. And suddenly we realized we have to change our attitudes towards, our kids were good kids. Don't get me wrong. It's just that we had this notion that our children were holding us down, that they were a imposition on us, that we were temporary, that we wait till they're in first grade and then we'd go about living our lives without them. And there was just something about that just struck us and said, we've got to change our attitude here. We've got to look at our children as what that one psalm said, a gift, a reward, something to be valued. Stephanie? Yeah, that was the corollary. If we were going to like our kids, they better be likable. A little bit, sometime later, this is actually years later, we're debating, well, should we have more kids and so forth? And that's when I read out of the NIV the phrase, has not the Lord made them one? And why one? Because he was seeking godly offspring. And I said, well, God wants godly offspring. I guess Stephanie and I are going to help him have godly offspring. And we then had 3 other children. And the thing is that every child was wanted, every child was a delight. Now 4 out of them are liberal as anything. They all Biden voters and things like that. But the thing is like they're young still. I don't know what God's going to do to them. The thing is like they are that way because they had freedom to be themselves. Okay. Now I bring that up because my challenge to the church is to let the church evaluate its view of children, family, and sexuality. Because, as I am, so you are. And the thing is that I don't want this to be legalistic. I don't want you to look at this and say somehow or other I'm a failure, I'm rotten, and this, that, and the other. I'm just asking you to take an evaluation and help others take an evaluation to change our church perspective on families and children. Okay? Do not make it a religious, legal thing, but just do that. Rather than rivaling cultural divorce rates, it could be great to have the church having the largest fertility rate in the nation. Our friend that had 5 children later on to have 10. And the thing is like, it's not like that Michael Bradrick had this job that brought in bukus of bucks and dollars, but that God provided. The scariest thing about having kids is, go to Bing or DuckDuckGo and say cost of raising a child, and it's like, well, you might get by, loosely on $6 million or some ridiculous figure like that. God provides. Okay. This is how the church leads. The thing is like if we, notice here, I'm not saying anything about the nations. I'm talking about the church here. If we can change in this attitude, if we can begin to shift to a better perspective, we will lead in this issue. This is not coming and saying, that, where we're going to start bashing gays and things like that. Because that's the wrong front. The flanking maneuver is to come around and say, what is righteousness? And righteousness is a strong Christian family. So let's go there. That's our battle line. It's the battle line in our own hearts to make fundamental change about who we, the church, are. Because we will have God's hedge of protection. David said, I was young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous abandoned or his children begging bread. Arrows in the hand of the warrior. You know, our children are our arrows into the next generation. And, okay, and this is important, because I am not guiltless. I'm not going to describe why I'm not guiltless. I'm just going to tell you I'm not guiltless. And it's possible that some of you aren't guiltless either. But you know, the one thing I see in the New Testament is that Jesus is around sexual sinners, and they get such grace. You know, this is the very thing that you can say, I'm going to go in a different direction. And God says, I'm here to help. You know, and bygones, you can leave that behind. And let's move on to the new. So this is an important thing. The thing is that this, along with Isaiah chapter 3, is setting the direction of this nation. You might say that what I am pronouncing when I talk about Isaiah 3, when I'm talking about here, this is God's assessment on this country. Okay. And the assessment invites change, it invites repentance. There are many here that talk about revival, and a big revival in the United States and saving and so forth. Maybe that will happen. But in the meantime, let's be strong as a church. Let's be the ark. Let's be the sanctuary. Let's be the place that the hurting out there can come to. So thank you so much for your attention.
Yes.